What's up, chat? Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another Trek the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on Subjugation of the King Dragons. My gosh, I said that right the first time. This whole of the King Dragons thing of the title just completely throws me off. It's King Dragons, and there's a king of it. I'm sure in the story it'll make a lot of sense. We'll see. We'll see. I have been sort of looking forward to this story because I might be wrong here. I think it's supposed to be about Kalman, and I really like Kalman's character, so if this is about him, that's great. I think it's Kalman the Second, specifically. If it's Kalman the First, that'd be cool too, but I think it's supposed to be Kalman the Second. I could be completely wrong. I'm going to this pretty blind here, so we'll see as we get in there, but I've been kind of looking forward to this. I do know, based on a little keep in mind note they have in the actual translation here, it's supposedly going to have some inconsistency to the main storyline, but is something that's a prototype to it. So that stuff does have me sort of interested, and at the same time putting a little bit of caution there. Either way, I'm locked in. Like I said before, no matter what story it is, no matter how many people want to come by for the premiere, we're going to cover it. If it's Mushoku Tensei, we're covering it. But that said, hey chat, welcome to premiere. Thank you guys so much for dropping by. Thank you guys so much for your support, your kind words, all that stuff. Thank you so much. It means a great deal to me that you guys have been supporting this entire journey through Mushoku Tensei, especially those that support channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Last week had Subber with a super, Sergio Donna with 34 months, Red Bandit with a super, Noah with a super, and also during the live stream we had Gearless come by with a super and a whole bunch of memberships. Thank you guys so much. It means a great deal to me. You guys are so amazing. With that said, we should just jump right into it. We have, again, Subjugation of the King Dragons prologue. Actually, first, let's do the keep in mind, because I think you guys need to know this information as well as me, so you guys can keep me in check as well, in case I start running down a rabbit hole and you're like, hey guys, don't forget the keep in mind part. It says this story was the first one written about the Sixth Phase world and was written in 2009, 3 years before Mushoku Tensei was written. You could say that it's a prototype of the Sixth Phase world, and as such, there will be historical elements that don't align with what we know with the official Mushoku Tensei lore, including differences in terminology and even magic and combat systems, or the existence of races we don't even know about. Even the world map has some major changes, such as the fact that the sea people don't exist in the story, which is what makes sea travel across the world possible. This is something that Refugin has explained in Volume 11 regarding the journey to Begret. Here the Begret is a continent of mercenaries who will make their living working in the wars of the central continent. It's also worth knowing the story takes place 300 years before the events of Mushoku Tensei, 100 years after the Lost War. So several elements that can be attributed to differences in the era and the current political climate rather than being considered lore errors, especially considering Mushoku Tensei itself mentions things that have changed in recent history. Some elements can be attributed to being the myths that people know, which is something that we've seen multiple times in Mushoku Tensei. What is known as history or myths isn't always what actually happened. Damn sure. We're damn sure. And this is also a theme explored in the story. I could have corrected these differences to make the story align more closely with what we know, but I think it's more interesting to keep them as they are. I think it's important. Whatever Refugin wrote, yeah, don't localize things. Don't be a localizer. Whatever he wrote. I mean, that's even what I had a feeling with when I was reading through the mainline series. It's like you run into these moments where it's like, oops, Refugin messed up here. Like, it's a legit, like, lol, the character completely forgot they had this conversation or something like that. And it's like, you can just kind of write it off as the character just forgot. Or you can just write it off that, yes, Refugin had a boo-boo. I don't want it to be changed. Whatever it's put there. That said, the main and most important events of this story are referenced several times in Mushoku Tensei light novels, and are therefore canon. I'll add footnotes to point out and clear differences between the known story and what is simply part of this era's setting. Enjoy. Thank you. But anyways, prologue. Weaponsmiths. They are ones that create countless weapons and supported this war-torn world from behind the scenes. If we were to sift through the immense amount of historical records, you would find that the existence of the holy swords and demon swords is almost always lurking behind the scenes of history. When the Demon King, who lived for thousands of years, perished, a holy sword was gripped in the hero's hands. When the conqueror who unified the continent was slain, a demon sword was held in the hands of the wicked bandit. Behind every turning point in history, there was always presence of either a holy sword or a demon sword. Blacksmiths, from the fierce artisans who forge a single holy sword in their lifetime before collapsing from exhaustion, to the demon craftsmen who forged dozens of demon swords, to the master smiths who passed their craft down, to the descendants producing one sword per generation. Only a handful have left their names in history. Among them, 3 are said to have forged the most famous and powerful swords, the Dragon Emperor of the Dragon Swords. The most well-known sword forged by the Dragon Emperor is likely the Dragon Sword, Graceful Phoenix, a sword of divine speed wielded by the Sword God. The swords forged by the Dragon Emperor, a descendant of an ancient dragon folk, do not contain magic powers, yet they never break, never bend, and no matter how much they are used, their sharpness never dulls. While many blacksmiths exist throughout the world, only the Dragon Emperor's sword are given the name Dragon Sword. The Dragon Emperor only forges swords for those he personally acknowledges, and swordsmen across the world dream of one day being recognized by him. Shichito, the master of strange swords, the beloved sword named Quarrel, of the Eastern sword master known as the Slaughter Dharma. The Slaughter Dharma is a legendary blade known to all. The master smith was born without What? Was born without hands? It remains a mystery how he became a blacksmith and forged swords, but every weapon he created was uniquely designed for those unsuited for conventional combat. So North God style, question mark? Is this a little bit of a hint to the North God style? For example, swords optimized for the use of the mouth or bows intended to be drawn with the feet. Yeah, again, this feels like North God style. Though his works were unconventional, the reason he is considered a master craftsman is simple. Those who wield his strange swords always stood out and carved their names into history. Yeah, if they're built and suited for whatever the person has and what they're capable of doing. And then, the last of the three, the most famous of them all, Julian Jalisco, and the 48 holy and demon swords. 24 pairs of holy and demon swords, 48 swords in total, carrying overwhelming magical power. Their sharpness and durability is said to surpass even the dragon swords, making them the ultimate blades. It is said that they came with a mere steps of reaching the realm of divine swords, making them, in essence, the most powerful swords in existence. The story of their creation had long been shrouded in mystery, though their legend has been passed down as a fairy tale. No one truly knew the details of their origins. Yeah, this is somebody that's been referenced before, with the 7 sword god blades and all that kind of stuff. The bones of the King Dragon Kajakut. What follows is a tale reconstructed from an old journal, a story of a hero who played a role in the secret history behind the birth of the 48 swords. Chapter 1, The Collapsed Ladies. That's a weird title. This isn't a story from too long ago. It was around the time when a long war between the demons and the humans had ended, and both sides had begun fighting amongst themselves over territory, an era of chaos and war. The central continent, where a majority of humans lived, was in a particular dire state. Though there was plenty of land, there was no rulers, and unclaimed lands were scattered all over. Village leaders would rise up to form nations, invade the neighboring nations, destroy it, only to be attacked and wiped out by another country soon after, and that neighboring nation would soon follow the same fate. It was the age where destruction and downfall were taken for granted. Wasn't it more peaceful when humans stood united as humans, and demons stood united as demons? Many people voiced that thought, but no one could ever provide an answer. How many wars have been fought? The number of bandits and mercenaries has skyrocketed. Farmers and their families slaughtered, their fields burned, and with no other choice, they turned to banditry or became mercenaries. Yeah, it's the unfortunate after effect of wars. Like when people are united, they have a common goal. They technically have a nation, a leader, or whatever that is forcing them to go this one direction. A lot of things like the economy and stuff is being fueled by the war itself. There's a camaraderie that happens. Everybody's coming together for one single cause. They have an enemy. And then once that kind of breaks, the economy kind of does a backshift. You know, you have people coming back from the war. You also have, in some cases, people don't come back from the war. They're not able to keep up their farms or whatever. Nothing is supplying for the area. Everything starts to collapse at that point. And yeah, once you have, you know, villages that are collapsing and other nations are invading and destroying those villages and whatnot, what route do you have, especially for the men, in order to provide for their families or themselves? Banditry. It's the unfortunate after effects of war. There was no other way to survive. The balance between supply and demand had broken, and those without means could only take from others. Orphans were born in great numbers. Some were lucky enough to be taken in by knights and serve as squires, but such cases were rare. Most became slaves or thieves, and the majority didn't even have the chance to simply starve to death. The situation was like a quagmire, with people fighting over what little food remained. Yet, even in that chaos, the human race had slowly begun to come together. The central continent was a fertile land. The further south and west one traveled, the more the plains disappeared, replaced by vast greenery that could never be fully exhausted. The war and famine had reduced the population, but the land still had potential to sustain many. Yeah, definitely the southwestern areas of the central continent. It's a very lush area. And one country had realized that and established a solid foundation, a nation that rose above the rest, known as the King Dragon Realm. Yep, protected by the King Dragon Mountains, it had steadily built its strength and wealth over time, becoming an immense prosperous nation. Its geography was also a great advantage, with the towering King Dragon Mountains standing tall. There were only two ways to reach the kingdom, a safe but long detour, or a dangerous and treacherous shortcut. The safe route led through a highway of flat land, but it required a long, winding detour around the mountains, making it both distant and time-consuming. However, it was easy to defend against invaders. Aside from the time factor, it had no downsides. The dangerous route, on the other hand, was a barren wasteland. No landmarks, no food, nothing but death. A place no normal person would traverse, but it had its shortest path to the King Dragon Realm, reducing travel time to just a quarter of the safe route. Many attempted to cross it, but few ever emerged on the other side. And this story follows a later path. It begins in the Wasteland of Death. Is that the name of it? The Wasteland of Death? An endless expanse of desolate land stretched as far as the eye could see. There was almost no vegetation, just a few scattered trees bearing poisonous fruits. The parched, cracked ground was littered with an occasional bleached skeleton. If not for the towering King Dragon Mountains in the distance, it would have been impossible to discern the direction. Even after 3 days and nights of walking, the scenery remained unchanged. A month. That was a time needed to cross the wasteland on foot from the neighboring country. This is the short route? This is the short route? Damn. But again, this is walking. There's no like driving a car or something like that. Or what Rudius gets later on, teleportation. Whether one saw that as vast or small, depending on the person. There were living creatures. Swarms of sandworms feasting on carrion thrived here. But aside from them, nothing else survived. Not even birds flew in the sky. A chilling silence, devoid of life. Some scholars speculated that there must have been some reason behind this eerie absence of life. I would assume mana. But what did it matter? Even seasoned travelers lost their lives here with ease, let alone armies. That was how dangerous and unforgiving this wasteland was. And yet, it remained the shortest route to the King Dragon Realm. In that wasteland, a lone boy walked. His armor clanked each step as he hummed a tune, pushing forward into the wasteland. He was clad in shining silver knight's armor, with a massive great sword strapped to his back. Is it Kalman? Is it Kalman? Is it Kalman? It's a great sword. It's a great sword. I'm getting all excited. His roughly cut black hair was tangled with sand, damaged from the harsh journey, but beneath it, his face was sharp, carrying an air of detachment from the world. Despite the unbearable heat, he made no effort to remove his armor. That's my big question right there. That's gotta be horrible. His walking posture was inefficient, clearly lacking experience as a traveler, and yet his expression remained cheerful. Should I do his voice? I feel stupid if it's not Kalman. Almost there. What burned in his chest? I miss his voice. I love doing his voice. It's just like a jippery style. What burned in his chest was a desire to become a hero. There's the third mark right there. It's got to be him. He had grown up hearing countless stories of legendary heroes, like his father, and he was always longing to be a protagonist of such a tale. Now, that dream was finally within reach, because the town that he was heading for was currently recruiting warriors for a dragon hunt. Dragons were the strongest creatures in existence, while formidable in flocks. They also stand as the largest beings on the land. With powerful magical abilities and sharp intellects, dragons were the ultimate life forms. Yeah, so were dragon folks, like Orsted. There were tales of dragons rampaging and destroying human kingdoms, but never had one been the case where humans ventured into a dragon's domain, wiped them all out, and returned alive. Yet, the boy believed that he alone could slay a dragon. Anyone could call him a dreamer, and they would be right. His goal was to become a heroic knight he heard about in fairy tales, an absurd existence. One who could single-handedly crush an army of 1,000,000, slay wicked dragons, and bring peace to the world. Such dreams were not unusual for boys in an era with so few forms of entertainment. Many children grew up aspiring to be heroes. It was a sort of childhood sickness, a fever that would pass with time, like measles. His name was Alex Ryback. Oh, man. Nicknamed Al. Was it? Did they ever say his nickname was Al? I don't remember that. Again, there's going to be differences here. A boy still caught in that fever. For that dream alone, he had earned the knight's title, walked through wasteland of death, and now sought to challenge a dragon. He was seriously ill. I better hurry or I'll miss it. Huh? Al suddenly spotted something ahead. A bundle of rags, or at least something that looked like rags. A tattered, filthy brown cloth. Wait, is that a person? Looking closer, it was indeed a collapsed human. Wrapped in tattered cloak, a small girl with chestnut-colored hair lay face down in the dust. A corpse, Al thought, but immediately dismissed the idea. There was no sandworms around it, nor had it decayed into a skeleton. Sandworms only consumed rotted flesh, so she could have died just moments ago. He pressed a palm against her back. A faint warmth, a pulse. She was still alive. A collapsed traveler, huh? Al unceremoniously flipped the girl onto her back. She had an impressively well-proportioned face. Dusky skin, most likely from Begret continent. A scar on her cheek gave her a boyish look. Even with her eyes closed, he could tell they were very sharp and slanted. Her chestnut hair blended well with both their skin tone and the barren wasteland. She was short and thin, but not emaciated like a slave. She had some muscle. Pardon me. Al checked her body for injuries. He wasn't looting a corpse or committing any decent act. He simply was making sure that she wasn't wounded. There was no injuries, and her clothing was intact. She hadn't been attacked by a monster or bandits. Not that Al knew if any existed in such a wasteland. She had the appearance of an experienced traveler, but she carried no supplies, no food, no water. Even the canteen on her waist was empty. She had likely run out of provisions and collapsed from hunger or dehydration. The most important thing for a hero is helping others. Now, drink up. Saying that, Al poured the contents of his canteen right onto the girl's face. After a solid 2 seconds, the girl coughed up violently and opened her vacant eyes. It must have gone up her nose. What, you were trying to waterboard her? Her expression was filled with confusion, but the momentary rough treatment was followed by a surprisingly gentle touch as Al brought the canteen to her lips, letting a small amount of lukewarm water trickle in. Though her consciousness was still weak, her body instinctively swallowed it. Moments later, the girl lost consciousness again. All right, now then, don't go dine on me. Al hoisted the girl onto his shoulder and resumed walking through the wasteland, humming a tune as he went. His steps were light. Since he aspired to be a hero, helping others was part of his life's work. Each time he helped someone, it was another step towards becoming a hero. Yeah, this is all totally him. Well, obviously and presumably before, all this stuff sort of came to a point where he's realizing he's reliant too much on a weapon. I'm assuming she's probably going to this whole party call to kill the dragons. Just absolutely failed at traveling through this area. That's why he was always on the lookout for people who had collapsed and who were in trouble. It wasn't that he took pleasure in other people's misfortune, but if someone had fallen, he could help them up, and that benefited him. He welcomed those in distress. He's so like his son, son like father right here. Of course, Al knew that no matter how many people he helped, he could never become the kind of hero whose name had been passed down through history that way. But everything was about accumulation. If he made a habit of acting with the awareness of a hero, then when the crucial moment arrived, he wouldn't stray from the right path. Besides, carrying 1 or 2 fainted girls to town was no great challenge for him. Crushing evil with my fist, getting crushed myself. Oh? What is that song? I'm trying to sing with his voice. What is that song? After walking for a few more hours, Al suddenly spotted something in his path. A large black armored beetle, amongst the many types of loathsome black creatures that lurked in the cracks of human homes. Some species grew over a meter in certain regions and were known to attack people. But to be precise, it was something that looked like a giant black beetle, but it wasn't actually a beetle. The glossy black metal reflected the sunlight. No, that's not an insect. It was a human clad in black armor. A tall woman had collapsed face down. Okay, the title's starting to make sense. Like, he's gonna run into a bunch of women that are all collapsed out here. It was a human clad in black armor. A tall woman had collapsed face down in the searing heat, wearing black armor that must have been burning hot under the sun. Al immediately assumed that she was dead. The way that she lay there showed no sign of life. If the girl earlier had been barely clinging to life, then this woman was barely clinging to death. Soon enough, she would start rotting and become feast for the sandworms. What a foolish woman, wandering through the barren wasteland in black armor. That trapped heat like he is, with nothing to block the sun. You have to wear shining silver armor, like mine, to reflect the sunlight. Okay, he's wearing silver, that's right. Well, it's still hot though. But a hero couldn't afford to complain about a little heat. A hero had to look the part. If a hero didn't wear armor, what was even the point? It is so funny, like, this makes me almost wish that I read this before I met the Kalmans in the mainline series, because suddenly everything about Kalman III makes sense. Like, everything Outlook is like, this is sounding very similar. It's sounding very similar. They kind of obviously got into that quite a bit with the mainline series itself. Again, with what he was trying to tell his son. Still, even if it was just a corpse, it was fate that he had found it. He should at least check her identity. Al let the load on his shoulder drop with a thud. A groan came from it, but he ignored it. Then he flipped the woman over onto her back. Huh? Her sand-covered face was flushed red, and there was still some life in her. He placed his hand on her cheek. She was burning up, probably heat stroke, but she was still breathing. Unexpectedly, it seemed that she'd only just collapsed. Al turned to look at his destination. In the distance, at the base of the towering King Dragon Mountain, smoke was rising. In about an hour, he'd reach the end of the wasteland and see the first plains where food could be found. She had bad luck. Yeah, that close. If she had just pushed herself a little further, she would have made it. Then again, considering that Al had found her, maybe she was just lucky after all. Because for him, saving a collapsed lady, or two, was no big deal. Al carefully removed the scorching hot black armor. Underneath, she wore a black maid uniform, the kind worn by castle attendants, woven with black chains throughout, giving it a strangely ominous look. What? Do maids usually wear armor? A maid crossing the wasteland in full armor. He couldn't come up with a reason, so he tilted his head in confusion. Well, everyone has their own circumstances, I guess. I love that he, of all people, is coming across this, because it's like one of those, wait, what? Wait, why is this knight or something? Why is this maid wearing this knight uniform? Or why is a knight wearing maid uniform underneath? Well, it is what it is. No, everybody got their own thing, Probably doesn't help that feel any less hot in there. After muttering that, Al bundled up the armor, tied it. Oh, he's going to carry the armor too. I think he's going to leave the armor. Tied it up on a rope and slung it over his back. Then he dumped the rest of the water over the woman. There was no shade anyways. The only choice was to head straight for town, whether she lived or died, depending on her own endurance. With that thought, Al hoisted the girl onto his left shoulder and carried the woman under his right arm. He was aiming to be a hero, so saving one or two people was nothing. All a day's work. He's such a great advanced warrior. The largest tavern in the King Dragon realm was packed fuller than usual. Al didn't know what more than usual meant, but compared to the other taverns, this one had a lot of seats, and they were all full. Additionally, a group that didn't seem to be customers was leaning against the walls, likely the more than usual part. Why was there such a crowd today? Al had an idea. Probably because this whole dragon hunting thing. It was the same reason that he had traveled to the King Dragon realm. Today was the day when the person who had issued the King Dragon slaying request would explain the details to all the participants. This tavern was the meeting place. But for now, another plate! Over here too! In front of Al, two women were devouring their meals, as if in a competition. One was a small girl with sharp, slanted eyes, not so much dignified as outright menacing. Her small body was wrapped in a tattered cloak, hungrily shoveling food into her mouth, focusing especially on meat. The other was a tall maid, with an intellectual, no, rather, a cold expression. She wore a black maid uniform, with jet black armor over it. Her refined appearance resembled that of a noble knight, but right now, there was nothing refined about the way that she hungrily eyed the food on the table, so only one of them is eating? A scary girl and a scary woman. The kind of people who gave an impression that, if you bumped into them on the street, they would pick a fight and strip you of everything, down to your last coin, and even have your ass hairs plucked out. What? What kind of figure of speech is that, Refugin? They will strip you down and pluck your ass hairs too? What the Okay. Interesting ladies. The moment they entered the tavern, they woke up, rushed inside with the strength they had recovered while sleeping, aggressively secured a table by driving out the customers like wild dogs, and ordered food in rapid succession. Which brings us now to the present. Seated directly across from them was Al, although he might as well have been invisible. Or rather, he probably was invisible to them. They were entirely focused on replenishing their lost nutrients. Okay, so they're both eating. Man, what a lineup we got here. The comment wasn't directed at him, but a nearby conversation caught Al's attention. Judging by the words, these were just travelers, or perhaps merchants unrelated to the gathering. Drunk on alcohol, they looked around, reeking of booze and in high spirits. That over there is the King Dragon Realm's Royal Knights, right? They're famous, led by the amazing lion, Leonardo Pompadour, a man who makes the impossible possible. He's pulled off countless invasion strategies and completed just as many successful defenses. He's the real deal. Following their gazes, Al spotted a group of about 10 knights clad in full armor in one corner of the tavern. Their steel-colored armor bore no unnecessary embellishments, aside from red plumes on their helmets. If not for the King Dragon Realm's crest engraved on their armor, they could easily be mistaken for mercenaries. Though their appearance was plain, the royal knights of the King Dragon Realm were renowned. Whenever a stray dragon descended from the King Dragon Mountains to attack the villages, they were the ones who dealt with it. And if the drunken men were to be believed, they were formidable warriors on the battlefield as well. In this war-torn era, the reason the King Dragon Realm remained a stable major power was largely thanks to them. A great nation's elite order of knights. There was no way they were weak. Yeah, again, there's a lot given to sort of the establishment of the King Dragon Realm, and even in the mainline series. And over there, hey, isn't that the Wild Leper's mercenary corps? Oh, no doubt about it. No one else on the continent wears that leopard pattern coat. And look, it's the Blue Leper's division, one of their elite forces. Al shifted his gaze again. 2 tables away from the royal knights, another group stood out. Just as the drunkards said, there was indeed a group wearing leopard print coats. Rather than vibrant, the base color of their coats was garsh blue, patterned with black leopard spots. The Wild Leopard Mercenary Corps was the largest mercenary organization on the central continent. I don't think they ever mentioned a leopard mercenary corps. And it's one of those funny things where it's like, yeah, I don't really expect them to mention this one thing, but at the same time, it's one of those... What are these stupid names that Refugin comes up with mercenary corps? It's such the goofiest names that he comes up with. At least they stand out and they're unique. At its peak stood the leader, Big Panther, beneath whom were 5 primary divisions, red, blue, yellow, white, and black. Each of these divisions had 4 subordinate brigades, and it was said their total membership exceeded 100,000. That is a lot. Holy crap. Again, they're technically right now, mercenary work is booming. A mercenary group the size of an army. Among them, one particularly stood out. A hunched man with his short hair, dyed the same gaudy blue as his coat. He was likely the leader of this group. He had an imposing presence. Their eyes met for a moment. The man didn't seem interested in Al, but past him, his gaze landed on one of the 2 women devouring their food. His expression twisted in distaste. An acquaintance? When Al turned to look, the Blue Leopard mercenary clicked his tongue and chugged his drink. What about the ones upstairs? Dazzling white armor. Only Holy Knights of Milis wear exorcist armor. They're the pride of the Holy Kingdom of Milis. The infamous Inquisition Squad. It's said they're even nastier than Temple Knights. But that's exactly why they're strong. With their overwhelming anti-magic equipment, they'll kill witches and whatever else gets in their way. Al shifted his gaze upward from the mercenaries. There, even more conspicuous than the Blue Leopard Division, was a group clad in white armor, the Holy Knights Order. Their full title was the Milis Exorcist Armored Corps. Their pristine white armor was imbued with extremely advanced anti-magic enchantments, making it a specialized defensive gear known as Exorcist Armor, powerful equipment granted exclusively to the Holy Knights. Technically, they were not official Knights of Milis. However, to foreigners, Milis Knights were synonymous with the Holy Knights. Unlike the Temple Knights, who rarely left their homeland, the Holy Knights were active throughout the continent, and thus far better known. They were not official Knights of Milis? I'm guessing of the country of Milis, but technically with the Holy Knights in the temple itself. I'm guessing that's what it means? Because that was sort of the case in the mainline series. There was the kingdom itself, and then there was, of course, the church. One among them, a man whose brutish face didn't suit the term Holy Knight at all, was staring at them in shock. He wasn't looking at Al. He was fixated on one of the 2 women. What is these 2 women, dude? Just like the Blue Leopard leader, his expression was filled with disgust, as if he spotted a piece of filth. Then, with a bitter look, he turned away. Hey, what's with those muscular guys? Just looking at them makes me sweat. Idiot, don't say that out loud. That's the Phoenix Nest. Oh my gosh, please stop introducing people. Refugin, you get way too caught up in introducing people. We've introduced way too many people. Let's move on. Please, Refugin. This is the last one, right? Don't say that out loud. That's the Phoenix Nest martial arts group. Their homeland doesn't have much in the way of metal for weapons or armor, so they develop barehanded combat techniques instead. Well, these days, they seem to have forgotten their original purpose. Phoenix Nest. Al had heard the name before. For reasons unknown, they insisted on fighting everything with martial arts alone. Fists were certainly powerful weapons. Everyone had them, so they were easy to carry. And the more they were trained, the stronger they became. They also had the shortest reach of any weapon, which meant that, with the right skill, they could deal immense damage at close range, if you can get up there. This seems like highly inefficient for the Mushoku Tensei world, honestly. I don't think they've ever really... I mean, Boreas Punch, obviously. We had the Boreas Punch, but in most cases, everybody willed the weapon. The weapon was what they used their battle aura with in order to be an extension and cause extreme damage. Never really had people that were punching, unless they were like a demon, like Bodygotti or something. But the undeniable fact remained, people were stronger when armed. What was the point in prioritizing portability? Long reach was always an advantage. Yet, despite knowing this, none of them were seated. Instead, they were being a nuisance, training vigorously in a corner of the tavern. Their leader seemed to be instructing a younger member. All of them were shirtless, their upper bodies covered in what looked like excessive, unnecessary muscle. However, in their homeland, it was said that monsters larger than humans and with skin tougher than steel roam freely. Against other people, such bulk might be a hindrance, but when fighting those creatures, it was likely a necessity. Of course, in an era where weapons could easily be imported, their way of life still seemed questionable. What about oh my god, for Fujin, please don't spend an entire 50 pages introducing people. I hope there's significance to all these characters. I'm assuming that he's introducing all these incredibly strong people so they can have them all get beat by the dragon, and then Alex does the work. I could sometimes admit that I don't like certain things that Refugin does, and this is one of them. I'm getting tired of introducing people. What about that shady bunch? Oh, some magic group from up north. I think, called something like the Order of the World Tree. It's an interesting name. Or whatever, but I don't know much. What I do know is that every single one of them is supposed to be monsters on the level of court magicians. They were an unassuming group, clad in brown and navy blue robes. They sat quietly at a table in the corner, eating their meals with little conversation. They didn't belong in this rowdy, alcohol-soaked atmosphere. There was a noticeable tension in the air, likely due to the presence of the Holy Knights. Magic was forbidden in the Holy Kingdom of Millis, and Holy Knights were known for their animosity towards magic users. Millis refused entry to mages, and if any were caught sneaking in, it was the Holy Knights' duty to execute them. Furthermore, hunting down and eradicating evil witches who defied Millis doctrine was also a part of their mission. Yeah, this obviously seems like it's a little bit of a change for Millis here from this point to the current time, because we do see that obviously in the current time they're using magic, like barrier magic and whatnot. There is a note here that talks about specifically the demons, and this could be a tie-in as well, because again, as we see with the ODT, a lot of the emphasis of magic is from demons, so maybe there's potentially a tie-in there as well. I could see that connection. When people lose their comrades, they react in anger, regardless of reason. Mages were still human, despite their differences. They were holding back their resentment. It was impossible to tell from their expressions. Then, suddenly, one of them, a girl, locked eyes with Al. Her gaze was distant and hazy. She tilted her head slightly. Damn, dude, Al's just drawing in the girls. Al's drawing in the girls. Yeah, again, kind of a carry-on to the previous thing. I do find it interesting to kind of see this different era where, yeah, mages could see Millis being sort of a threat to them. The knights themselves, hunting them down or whatever. Al quickly averted his eyes. After a short while, at the tavern stage, a man appeared accompanied by his guards on the platform where traveling bars typically performed. His skin was a deep purplish black. He had 4 arms. It was obvious that he was a demon, and if he was a demon, then there was no doubt he was the host of this gathering. The tavern fell silent. Even the drunkards shut their mouths. After all, 5 powerful factions were staring them down. No one dared to speak. Even the sound of chewing seemed like they could draw unwanted attention. Of course, for the 2 women obviously slurping their noodle dishes. The surrounding tension meant nothing. I am Julian Jalisco. Though I suppose I don't need to introduce myself. Anyone here already knows that I am a weaponsmith. His voice wasn't particularly loud, yet in this silent tavern, it carried to the very edges of the room. He must be from a race that had underdeveloped vocal cords. His voice was raspy, typical of demons. He was still young. While some demons could live for thousands or even tens of thousands of years, he had likely not even reached 500. It was difficult to determine a demon's age by appearance alone, but as a general rule, demons grew more ferocious with age. He still lacked the hungry, beast-like aggression of the older ones. That was proof of his youth. That's interesting. I don't think they've ever really technically implied that before, but it makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that would be the case. The reason I've gathered you here is something that you are already well aware of. The tavern stirred for a moment, almost breaking into its usual chatter, but only for a moment. Silence returned just as quickly. I intend to forge a sword. The theory is complete, and the forge is ready. However, one thing is missing. The materials. He got straight to the point. I will use the ruler of the King Dragon Mountains, the king of the King Dragons, Kachikut, as my material. To that end, I want you to enter the King Dragon Mountains, slay the king of the King Dragons, and bring back every last part of his corpse, down to the grime under his claws. A king dragon. Compared to other dragons, it's a dragon with an overwhelmingly massive body, capable of wielding advanced gravity magic to move its seemingly heavy frame with incredible agility. As a group, the red dragons were stronger. A single step into their territory meant being devoured in an instant. But in one-on-one combat, the king dragon was the strongest. The king dragons were the mightiest of all dragons. And then there was a king of the king dragons, Kajikut. His name was more famous than any other dragon, an ancient being that lived for tens of thousands of years. During the Human-Demon War, he had fought against the hero of the Ghost Tribe, Lan Zhao, who sided with the humans and won. Interesting. The Ghost Tribe? I would guess that's a demon tribe? The note says this could be Ghost Race or Fairy Tribe, as it uses Yozoku. This is the same kanji for yokai, which are like demonic spirits. Huh. Again, presumably going to be bringing up some different races here that were in the original one. As a reward, the demon god granted him dominion over the King Dragon Mountains. Very few who lived that great war remained, aside from the immortal demon king Etoff, who ruled over a region of the demon continent. That's how long ago it was. Kajikut, the king of the King Dragons, a being beyond human comprehension. As for your reward, I have prepared enough for you to live in luxury for the rest of your life. In addition, I will grant the finest of swords I forged from the king of the King Dragon's body. The room erupted into murmurs. It didn't matter if the creature was beyond human comprehension. People live for their desires. With that much money and with that sword, their families would prosper for generations. Eyes burn with excitement. Go, the King Dragon awaits in the mountains. At the shout of the demon blacksmith, Julian, the tavern roared back to life. No, even more than before. One by one, the strongest factions rushed out in a frenzy. In mere moments, the tavern emptied, leaving only a few drunken stragglers with no interest in dragon slaying. And Alex and the two women. Realizing that he had fallen slightly behind, Al hurriedly stood up. The one who will defeat the dragon is me. I can't afford to fall behind the others. There's no time to waste. I'll run out now, overtake them, and head straight for the king of the King Dragons. Going now would be pointless. Hearing that voice, Al stopped in his tracks. When he turned, he saw the tall maid, looking quite pleased as she bit down on a toothpick. The sunburned redness of her heat stroke had faded, returning her skin to a pale complexion. That satisfied expression of hers even carried a hint of seductive charm, something entirely unbecoming of a maid. Right. Right. Unbecoming of a maid, right. Beside her, the sharp-eyed girl also wore a similar expression of satisfaction as she sipped from her post-meal tea. Al addressed the woman. He didn't even know her name, yet, for some reason, her words carried weight. What do you mean by pointless? The woman scoffed as if he asked something absurd. I mean that it's pointless. And what do you mean by meaningless? Though Al felt that they were going in circles, he pressed further. The woman tilted her head. What, is your goal not dragon slaying? Did I misunderstand? You didn't misunderstand. I intend to defeat the dragon and become a hero. Al declared it proudly, with full confidence. The woman smirked at the word hero. She thought he was joking, but Al was serious, and he took it as mockery. It must have shown on his face, because the woman blinked in surprise and bowed her head slightly. Oh my, I'm sorry. Defeating a dragon to become a hero, certainly a noble dream. More importantly, what do you mean by pointless? The apology cooled Al's irritation for a brief moment, and he repeated his question. This time, the woman answered properly. If a large group enters a mountain, the king dragon will become cautious. So you're saying, since the disturbance, the king of the King Dragons, Kajikut, will retreat deeper into the mountains? Who knows? He might come out, meet them head on. But, more likely, he's going to ignore whatever the humans are doing. That means this won't be over in a day. It'll take a week, maybe two. Possibly even a full month of searching before they find the king of the King Dragons. The group that just rushed out will eventually have to return to resupply. So it'll be best to move after that, when they're not there, and avoid them altogether. If it were me, that's what I would do. If a large force entered the mountain, even the king of the King Dragons himself wasn't disturbed. The younger King Dragons would be provoked into a frenzy, forcing them into battle. Those groups were certainly strong enough to handle 2 or 3 King Dragons at once, but the mountains themselves would descend into chaos. In that case, it was safer and less exhausting to venture out alone after things settled down. That was what the woman was implying. Tracking information could be gathered from the trails left behind from the other groups. Well, if you know it's pointless, but still can't hold yourself back, go ahead. With that, she let out a vulgar burp. Al nodded at her words and sat back down. Tell me more. My name's Alex Ryback. People call me Al. Ryback? That name sounds familiar. Some influential family from the countryside, perhaps? Yes, back home. My family is fairly well known. But I doubt anyone would recognize the name in this faraway foreign land. So, you're from the north, judging by your face? I'd say you're from the Tetsuga and Cold Plains area. No, much further east than that. I see. Quite a rural upbringing then. There was no notable nations east of the Cold Plains that she had visited. She mentally mapped out the region and gave a vague nod. Waste! I've been late in thanking you for saving me. Thank you, Al. And nice to meet you. I'm Shaina Mariane. Mariane, what the hell? What the hell? What? I'm trying to think if there'd be any sort of tie-in with Randolph. Did they ever talk about a Shaina Mariane before? I think they talked about Randolph's Beloved, but I think that was way before then. I'm trying to think if this is lines up or not. I can't remember. She flashed a seductive smile and gave a graceful bow. My profession is that of wandering knight. You can call me a mercenary, but for now, I still consider myself a knight. She extended a hand. Al took it, and they shook hands. Wander knight, huh? That sounds cool. Sounds cool. All right, cool. He swallowed the urge to ask, then, what about the maid outfit? Shaina smirked. It's not as glamorous as you think. It just means that I'm a knight who can't join any order, with no home and no place to belong. Knighthood was granted by a king. One can earn it through battle achievements, skill with a sword, or various other reasons. But it wasn't a title that just anyone could obtain. It was given to those who upheld etiquette and tradition. Even if a knight's kingdom fell, they retained their title. Such knights were called wandering knights, free agents without a royal family to serve. Interesting. I can see that too. Unlike mercenaries, knights had responsibilities beyond just fighting. A knight was not just a warrior. They were expected to be present at ceremonies, diplomatic events, and other official functions. If a noble needed an escort but lacked a capable knight, they often hired wandering knights for protection. Different countries had different expectations for wandering knights. Some treated them like mercenaries, sending them into rough battles. Shaina was likely the type who was most useful in combat, rather than just ceremonial duties. Al could tell just by shaking her hand. This was not the hand of someone who had only lifted a sword for show and ceremonies. This was the hand of someone who could wield it. And so, Al smiled warmly. No place to belong to? That's gotta be some kind of joke. Surely many knights' orders would want you to join them. Based on how, it seemed like potentially two people looked at her with disgust. They could have been looking at the other one, but two could have been looking at her with disgust. Might have been dishonored at some point. Shaina curiously rubbed his hand. You too, Al. If you're aiming to slay a dragon, you must have some skill. Of course, I'm strong. You say that about yourself? Quite the confidence. Without confidence and determination, I wouldn't stand a chance. I mean, if you got the skills, you can claim it. Al released her hand. Thanks for the meal. At the same time, a cup was set down on the table. A sharp-eyed girl took a deep breath, then locked her eyes with Al. It was only a glance, but the intensity of her gaze made it feel like she was piercing through him. Thanks to you, I was saved. Name's Chiki. Chikita. Remember it. She extended a hand. Chiki is an assassin for hire. Came here for a job. Al's hand suddenly froze for just a second. But a profession was just that, a profession. An assassin was not the same as a murderer. Yeah. Okay, I guess. You're murder for hire, basically. You kill what you kill for a coin. It just, the reason for killing the person in cold blood's different. Instead of passion or hatreds for coin. And assassins in a lot of cases can kill for the same reason as your typical murderer. Alex Ryback, call me Al, Miss Cheeky. Got it, Al. But seriously, carry two people across the wasteland? That's some stamina. What the hell do you eat? It's nothing special. The both of you are close to the end of the journey anyways. Al said that as if it were no big deal. That wasteland, after all, was just a 1-week trek. With enough food, water, and equipment, anyone should be able to cross it. Al didn't understand why it had such a fearsome reputation amongst travelers. There are tricks to survive in places like that. Tricks? Yeah, for example, those carrion-eating sandworms are actually edible. They're surprisingly nutritious. Cheeky grimaced and immediately let go of his hand. Eating something that had been feeding on corpses meant that, in a way, you're eating corpses themselves. That level of bad taste was beyond her tolerance. There was a limit for gluttony. Sandworms can be baited with a single strip of dried meat. They live deep underground in damp areas, so they're full of moisture. An essential survival resource for traveling through a wasteland. Chicky shook her head with a look of pure disgust. Chicky's a city girl. Chicky doesn't eat bugs. Is that so? Back in my hometown, everyone eats them normally. Though, I suppose they're not exactly delicious. I guess that's just how it is. It wasn't really a matter of taste. But if that explanation was enough to satisfy Al, Chicky wasn't going to argue. She wasn't so ungrateful as to complain about the preferences of a man who just saved her life. Does that mean that you're not very good at traveling, Miss Chicky? If you'd rather collapse than eat bugs? That's not true. Chicky is a top-class assassin. This was just a little mistake. I see. What about you, Miss Cheyenne? Al shifted his focus to Cheyenne, who had just been silently listening to their exchange. I wouldn't call my a mistake. Right before setting out, someone provoked me, saying that there was no way I could cross the wasteland alone in full armor. I let my pride get the best of me. And, well, here we are. And what would you have done if you died? Al sighed in exasperation. China, however, waved it off with a carefree smile. But I made it here alive, didn't I? Hey, a win is a win. A win is a win. Hey, I made it. I made it. God damn, that's some pride right there. Let the pride get the better of her, and then it's still holding the better of her. The knight is right. Chicky nodded firmly. Maybe so, but Al trailed off, studying the self-proclaimed top-class assassin. Indeed, her demeanor was sharp. He couldn't judge the full extent of her skills, but at the very least, she didn't reek of amateur like some thug claiming to be an assassin in a back alley. However, she was small, both in height and overall build. He couldn't picture her engaging in direct combat to kill someone head-on. Perhaps she was more like an infiltrator, someone who would use her small frame to slip into the places unnoticed, or blend into crowds and strike from behind. That, at least, was more conceivable. Earlier, she said that she came to this nation for work, but Al chose not to ask her what the target was. He wasn't particularly interested. A hero is someone who saves people, but that doesn't mean they condemn killing. I guess those are two entirely different things. It's an odd little thing to kind of proclaim. Saving one person might mean another dies. Killing one person might mean another is saved. Looking at it from a broader perspective, they were the same thing. Al and Chicky were both simply doing their jobs. Yeah, technically, by saving Chicky, he's going to put like 5 other people to death. But also in bringing her, she can kill somebody that can kill 5 other people. So he could save lives with her. It's all in circumstances. By the way, you, Al, was it? Yes? Chicky suddenly looked serious. You are Chicky's savior, but Chicky has no money. If you're talking about the mill, don't worry about it. She shook her head. No, that too, but more importantly, Chicky was saved. That's true. Chicky's job is to take lives. Lives have a price. So, if life is saved, it should be paid in kind. Do you understand? I understand. If there were a fee for destroying something, then there should be a fee for creating it. If taking a life requires payment, then saving one should as well. That was her assassin's logic. But I'm not a professional rescuer, so I don't need payment. But leaving this as it is, it doesn't sit right with Chicky. Even if you say that, Al took it as a request to name his price. He placed his hand on his chin, thinking for a moment, then suddenly clapped his hands as if he came to a great idea. If you insist, then pay me with your body. Oh my gosh. That's totally not going to be what it means. What? Chicky's eyes widened, and faint blush spread across her cheeks. She froze for several seconds, eyes darting around nervously, until she noticed the woman beside her, giving Al a cold, unimpressed look. She lowered her lashes. I see, my body, huh? Very well. But, as you can see, Chicky's body is quite lacking. I doubt I could satisfy you. Are you still fine with that? Don't be so modest, Miss Chicky. I carried you all the way here, didn't I? Your body is powerful, flexible, and resilient. It's full of vitality. God damn, dude. It's a wonderful physique. Is that so? No one has ever told me that before. You're quite passionate, aren't you? Yes, I've seen situations like this before, but having it said to my face is embarrassing. Well, just be gentle in bed, alright? Chicky's face turned completely red as she fidgeted and glanced up at Al shyly. Al tilted his head. Bed? No, I'm planning on having you work hard in the mountains. In the mountains? Chicky was utterly stunned. She was well informed about such things. God damn, dude. It keeps getting worse. She was well informed about such things. She knew those kind of activities were typically done indoors. Doing them outdoors was an advanced technique. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but Chicky is inexperienced, so at least... She muttered nervously, but Al cut her off. It's fine. I'm a first-timer too. That's why we'll do it in the mountains. He said it with such confidence that Chicky was left in pure shock. Could it be that the workings that have been going on ever since birth of living creatures are evolving day by day? Thinking back, She vaguely recalled someone she knew mentioning something similar once. Something about how doing it under an open blue sky, surrounded by a sense of freedom and danger, was the best experience. Did she meet Ellen Lace at some point? She must have met Ellen Lace at some point. I see. So that's why. Forgive my ignorance. But is it really best for the first time to be done in the mountains? Well, castles sound appealing too. Like an ancient ruin deep in a dark forest, once home to a demon king. Huh, that does sound romantic. That I can understand. But still, for dragon slaying, the mountains are best. Finally! Goddamn. Dragon slaying? Hearing the unfamiliar term, Shiki finally lifted her head. My target is Kajakut, the king of the king dragons. He won't go down easily. I need companions. By the time 3 seconds had passed, the flush in Chiki's cheeks had completely vanished, and her face had returned to its usual color. I thought it would go pale, like she feels stupid. She turned and glared at the knight beside her, who was covering her mouth to suppress a laugh she knew. Hey knight, did Chiki just make a fool of herself? You made a spectacular fool of yourself. Chiki thought so too. Chiki thought so too. Okay, these two are dorks. I kind of like them with Alex. With a single snort, Chiki folded her arms and looked back at Al, slightly lifting her chin in a commanding manner. Dragon slaying, huh? Fine. Chiki specializes in humans, but if you take me along, I might be some use. I'll earn my keep. Thank you. Al bowed deeply to the much younger girl. He was confident that he could take down the king of the king dragons alone, but if someone else killed him first, that would be meaningless. More people meant better chances of success. 1 was better than none, 2 were better than 1, and 3 was even better. Al turned his gaze to Shaina. And what about you, Miss Shaina? Shaina made a sour face. What about me? I'm not interested. But you came here for the dragon hunt, didn't you? I was impressed by your keen insight earlier. Please, lend me your strength, Miss Shaina. There's no way. I don't like dragon dead weight around. A perfect rejection. It wasn't a negotiation. She simply wasn't interested. But Al wasn't ready to give up. She was experienced. Perhaps she had never slain a dragon before, but she knew how to compete with large, organized groups and outmaneuver them to claim victory. Even though Al was confident in his ability to slay a dragon, he wasn't so sure that he would be the first one to find one. That wasn't his area of expertise. Al wanted to slay a dragon, not search for one. When it came to tracking down the dragon, she would surely be reliable. He wanted her to come along at all cost. Normally, if she refused, he would have let it go. But since Chica had already agreed to help, he couldn't help but hope for more. Still, how was he supposed to persuade her? As Al struggled with words, someone else stepped in to help. Hey, Knight, are your principles heavier than your life? The voice came from right beside him. It was Chiki. Shaina found herself being glared at by the smaller girl, and she let out a sigh with a wry smile. Gonna hit her right where it hurts. Are your principles heavier than your life? Damn. That's a tough one. Then just help him. Or do you want to hoard all the rewards for yourself? That's not it. It's not like I can take down the king dragon alone anyways. But, how should I explain this? Shaina folded her arms and groaned. Al could tell that she had her own reason for refusing. A knight was bound by duty and honor, even a wandering one. Returning a life debt should be a given, yet she was still reluctant. There had to be a reason. Al, why do you want to slay this dragon? After much deliberation, Shaina finally asked. She seemed to be postponing her answer, laying the groundwork first. Why, you ask? Al chuckled. For money? No. I may not look like it, but I come from a wealthy family. If you want, I wouldn't mind giving you a share of my reward. He said it casually, without hesitation. My, how generous. Then, is it a sword forged by the demon blacksmith that you want? No, my family's passed down this treasure sword for centuries. At the very least, unless it breaks or becomes unusable, I have no reason to use another weapon. He placed his hand on the hilt of his great sword, strapped on his back, speaking as if it was obvious. If you're that selfless, I can't help but suspect that you have some kind of hidden motive. I do have a desire. Oh, what is it that you desire? I want to become a hero. So, what I desire is fame. Fame? Huh. Shaina scoffed at the word, outright laughed at him. This time, it was genuine mockery, full of contempt. Al was well aware of how little value fame or heroism held in this world. Fame. It wasn't something one actively sought. It was something that clung to you like dead weight after you knew it. Anyone who set foot on a battlefield had the potential to earn it, so long as they survived. Fame naturally followed, but Al didn't frown at her derisive laughter. Had it been mere casual ridicule, he might have been irritated, but Shaina's reaction was different. She harbored a deep-seated hatred for the word fame. I mean, that would explain why she's so hesitant here. Obviously, based on previous conversation, she probably doesn't like it. And what do you plan on doing once you have it? What's the point of earning fame and being called a hero? No matter what you say, slaying a king of the king dragon Kajikut, becoming known as a dragon-slaying hero, has meaning. There's no meaning in that. There is. Al said it firmly, as if biting down on the words. It was fine if China despised the idea of fame, but the act of seeking fame itself wasn't inherently wrong. Besides, the hero that Al wanted to become wasn't the kind that people usually spoke of. His aspiration was something far more personal and idealistic. So Al simply gazed at China. What? China fell silent. She flinched. She swallowed hard. There is meaning. At least, for me. That was all Al could say. If there was no meaning, he wouldn't have come all this way. Being called a hero had meaning. It needed to have meaning. Al admired heroes. But he wasn't just chasing a dream. His feelings were too complex to fully articulate. He wasn't particularly eloquent. And if he tried to explain it all from the beginning, even he might lose track of what he was trying to say. But there was one thing he could say. Please, the king of the king dragons is also my father's killer. With that, Al lowered his head. How much time had passed? Eventually, China let out a breath and relaxed her shoulders. Fine. If you're that determined, I'll help. Then, just as Al lifted his head in joy, China let out a long sigh and looked up at the ceiling. Her expression was one of reluctant resignation, with the scales tipping on both directions, like someone forced to make a choice they didn't want to make. But on one condition. This isn't a deal. It's a promise. If you keep this promise, I won't just help with the dragon hunt. I'll stay as your companion for as long as you need. If it's something I can do. Al nodded solemnly. China looked at him with a dull, weary eyes. It's simple. Her expression was bleak, but her voice made it sound like the easiest thing in the world. If something happens and things get dangerous, I want you to leave me behind and run away. It isn't a deal, it's a promise. But if you keep the promise, I won't just help with the dragon slaying. I will be your companion as long as you need. Just make sure to run away. She has some kind of, past trauma with people not running away and trying to save her and dying, I'm guessing. It's kind of odd to say that you'll be a companion forever as long as you run away at some point. Al smiled warmly. Oh, is that all? He answered immediately. The two girls had expected him to refuse outright. They thought he would shake his head and say he couldn't possibly do such a thing. It's no trouble at all. The moment he spoke, Chica spat out her tea right into Al's face. Again, this is the guy that literally, took all the armor from one of them, threw it over his back, picked up the two girls, and carried them all the way to town, and then fed them. Oh, yeah, I'll run away. Sure. Okay, that's a little bit unexpected. No, man, a hero will never abandon somebody. Jeez. Anyways, that is chapter 1. I'm gonna probably call it there just because I don't think I can fit an entire another chapter. Chapter 1 was extremely long, and it's pretty much looking like it's gonna fill that entire Mushoku Monday, but really good introduction so far into Subjugation, or at least the story of Alex here going to take out the king of the king dragons. I don't recall them ever mentioning in the mainline series that his father was killed by the king of the king dragons. I'm assuming that's either going to be a lore that was never revealed in the mainline series, because I don't think they ever even mentioned how he died. I think it's assumed that he just died of old age or something like that. I don't know. So it's kind of interesting to kind of have some added lore here, or again, there be just some kind of, oddity that's not matching between the two of them. But I do like the introduction of Chiki and China so far. They look like two fun little characters to have with Alex. I've always had a fun time with Alex's character. He's always been a fun character. Again, he's a chuny like his son, but he's a lot more grounded. He's just at least has a charm about him that I like, and so I'm liking to have an entire story about him and give him his voice back, his little chippery, charming voice that I love doing for him. But I like those two characters. I think they're a pretty solid kind of balance with him. So far, Chiki is interesting in the idea that she's an assassin that is somehow found her way here. I'll be curious to see if potentially there's somebody within one of these others, a million groups that we just spent the entire of this chapter introducing. One of these other groups they're after, or they're set to actually kill. If it ends up being Alex himself, that'd be a little bit oddity there. But it might be Alex. But she seems like a goofy little character to add into here. China obviously being the more curious one here because of her name. Obviously, Marianne. Randolph having a similar family name at least. I'll be curious to see if there's actually a connection there. I don't recall her ever being mentioned before. So hopefully some point in this story we might have a direct connection created at some point. I'm guessing by the timeline here, it sort of matches up with his lifespan. So potentially there could be a connection they're going to make here. But again, I don't recall them ever naming dropping her, unless it was potentially translated a different way. That could be as well. I'm certain there's probably going to be a translation difference or something somewhere. But anyways, she seems pretty interesting. I'll be curious to see more about her. It seems like she's very duty-bound at the same time. Seems like she is potentially caused the death of somebody because they decided to save her. And that could be tie-in with why, again, my assumption is people look at her with disgust. It could be that they're looking at Cheeky. If an assassin is known by people, it's kind of dumb. But they could be looking at Cheeky. I'm assuming they're all looking at Shina. And it makes me believe that she got her knighthood title, but it was probably through somebody that fell apart, a king that fell or something like that, and they possibly blame her or see her as dishonorable in some way, even though she does have knighthood. That's my assumption they're going to have with her. But good introduction of those two characters, and I'm glad to have them on board, and it's not just Alec's story, just because I think it would be probably a little bit boring just to be him. Now we at least have, 3 individuals here that can have a good chemistry as they go off and hunt down the King of the King Dragons, so good stuff there. It's gonna be a fun little journey here. I like the references so far made to the mainline series as well. The blacksmith, the Kajakut, obviously. These are things that we've brought up several times. The blade of Kajakut, all that stuff has been brought up several times. It's of course connection to gravity power and the King of King Dragons. That stuff is all again stuff that we got into quite a bit, especially towards the later part of the mainline series. So getting this kind of connection as well is cool. It's funny that it's not as jarring as I thought it would be based on the little read this moment at the very beginning that was the warnings of there could be a lot of inconsistency here. So far it's been pretty solid, so I'm glad that it's not as jarring as I thought it would be. But anyways, that's it for this Mushoku Monday. I'm sad that it wasn't as much to kind of dig into this time around. Hopefully next week we'll have some more juicy bits to kind of theorize and dig into. But it's a good introduction so far. If I think of anything, again, as usual, between now and then, I'll bring them up in the beginning of the next Mushoku Monday. But for now, that is it for this Mushoku Monday. I thank you guys so much for dropping by for the premiere. Hey, chat. Hope you guys had fun. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week after Mushoku Monday. But I greatly appreciate your guys' support, your kind words, all that stuff. It means a great, great deal to me. But until the next Mushoku Monday, until the next part of Subjugation of the King Dragons, y'all take care. Swarms of sandworms feasting on carrion fly. Swarms of sandworms feasting on carrion thrived here. And look, it's the blue leopards division. And look, it's the blue leopards of it. And look, it's the blue leopards of it. And look, it's the blue leopards of it. The blue leopards division. Their full title was the Mills Exorcist Armored Corps. Their full title was the Mills Exorcist